She was the first ever queen to rule England all by herself. Her people loved her so much that they literally fought to put her on the throne. And somehow, in just 5 years, she got a nickname that has gone down in history, Bloody Mary. So how does a princess who suffered for years become a queen who burns hundreds of her own people at the stake? This is the unbelievable story of Mary Tudor. Her mission to save her country's soul would unleash a rain of fire. Her life was an insane paradox, a victim who became a monster, a ruler whose faith became her cruelty, and a queen whose legacy was literally written in smoke. Back in the 1500s, the Tudor dynasty was on the verge of collapse. King Henry VIII desperately needed a son to keep the throne. After years of being married to a Spanish princess, Catherine of Aragon, and a crazy string of tragedies with his children, only one healthy kid survived, a daughter born in 1516. They named her Mary. For a while, she was everything to her parents. Henry was disappointed he didn't have a son, but he was obsessed with his little girl. He would literally show her off to foreign visitors, bragging that she never cried, and showing them her red hair that she got from him. Her mom, Catherine, was super smart and religious, and she gave Mary a level of education most women could only dream of. Mary learned Latin, French, and Spanish, and she was a rock star at music, especially one of her dad's favorite instruments. She was the jewel of the English court, and for a time the undisputed heir to the throne. In 1525, Henry basically made her the Princess of Wales, giving her her own castle and a royal court. Her future looked totally secure. Sure, she was promised in marriage like 1,000 times as a pawn in Europe's political games, but she was still the most important pawn. Mary grew up with two things defining her entire world: being the future Queen of England and the super strong Catholic faith her mom taught her. She was her dad's favorite and England's biggest hope. But the king's obsession with having a son was like a hurricane about to hit, and it was going to destroy every single thing Mary had ever known. The hurricane finally hit, and it was called the Great Matter. Catherine of Aragon was too old to have more kids, and Henry VIII was now completely obsessed with having a son. He convinced himself his marriage was cursed by God because he'd married his brother's widow. Plus, he had his eyes on someone new, the incredible and ambitious Anne Boleyn. Henry needed a divorce from the Pope to declare his marriage to Catherine was never real, but Catherine refused to back down. She swore their 24-year marriage was legit. The Pope, getting pressured by Catherine's powerful nephew, said no. What Henry did next was an earthquake. He was so mad he took a sledgehammer to English society itself. He literally broke away from the Catholic Church, made himself the supreme head of the new Church of England, and had his own guy grant the divorce. In 1533, he married a pregnant Anne Boleyn. For Mary, the result was instant and catastrophic. With just the stroke of a pen, she went from princess to being declared a bastard. A new law made her illegitimate, kicked her out of the line for the throne, and her entire staff was fired. She was sent to be a lady-in-waiting for her new baby half-sister, Elizabeth. He even forbade her from seeing her own mother, a move so cruel it scarred her forever. When her mother was dying, Henry still refused to let Mary say goodbye. The psychological damage was insane. Mary, now a teenager, had to choose her dad or her faith. Her life was in real danger because she refused to accept Anne as queen or her dad as head of the church. She lived in constant fear. Her entire world was destroyed. And for what? For a son that Anne Boleyn would never even give him. The fall was just the beginning. The next few years were pure suffering that turned Mary into a person with unbreakable willpower. After Anne Boleyn was executed and Henry married Jane Seymour, things got a little better for Mary, but not by much. She was finally pressured into signing a paper admitting her dad was the head of the church and that she was illegitimate, a sin she would regret for her entire life. In exchange, she was let back into the palace, but her reputation was ruined. When her half-brother Edward was born in 1537, Henry finally had the son he wrecked his kingdom for. A new law put Mary and Elizabeth back in line for the throne, but only after Edward. Still, the damage was done. She wasn't the special heir anymore, just a backup plan. When the super-Protestant Edward VI became king in 1547, things got even worse for Mary. The new government was aggressively Protestant, and Mary became a lonely Catholic icon. She clung to her faith with insane stubbornness, openly holding Catholic Mass in her private chapels, which was against the law. This wasn't just religion, it was a political challenge. Her faith was the last thing connecting her to her mother and the life that was stolen from her. It was the one thing they couldn't take away. The young king and his team saw her as a massive threat, a symbol for all the Catholics in England. They tried over and over to make her give up her faith, but she refused. Her trauma and her religion were now completely fused together. She believed with all her heart that England had lost its way, and that she, Mary, was chosen by God to save it. All she needed was a chance. That chance came in July 1553. Her half-brother, King Edward VI, died at just 15. Before he died, his top advisor, the Duke of Northumberland, convinced him to write Mary out of the succession again. They were terrified of a Catholic queen, so they planned to put Northumberland's own daughter-in-law, the Protestant Lady Jane Grey, on the throne instead. On July 10, 1553, Lady Jane Grey was proclaimed Queen of England, but Mary had been warned and escaped to East Anglia, a Catholic stronghold. What happened next was unbelievable. This wasn't just a fight for the crown, it was a fight for England's soul, and the people chose their side. The entire country rallied to Mary. She was Henry VIII's daughter, the rightful heir. To regular people, this was a blatant scam by Northumberland. Landowners, nobles, and normal people flocked to join Mary's side, building a massive army. Her march to London became a giant victory parade. The support for Mary was so overwhelming that the government in London, which had backed Jane, gave up almost immediately. They abandoned Northumberland and switched sides. After a reign of only 9 days, Lady Jane Grey was thrown in the Tower of London. On July 19th, Mary was proclaimed Queen in London to insane celebrations. She did it. The princess they had thrown away had claimed her birthright. She was the first undisputed queen regnant in English history, a monarch with her own power, not just a king's wife. She won her crown because the people demanded it. At that moment, she wasn't Bloody Mary. She was the people's queen. It seemed like her tragic past was finally over. Now her real reign could begin. Mary hit the throne at 37 with one single, unbreakable mission: bring England back to the Catholic faith and heal the spiritual sickness she believed had infected it. This was her divine purpose. Her first moves were to cancel all her brother's Protestant laws and restore the Pope's power. Then she brought back the old heresy laws, which made being a Protestant a crime punishable by death. If you didn't believe the communion bread and wine were literally the body and blood of Christ, you could be killed. Her personal life was now political. To secure a Catholic heir and keep her Protestant sister Elizabeth off the throne, Mary had to get married and have a child. She chose Prince Philip of Spain. The marriage, in 1554, was incredibly unpopular. It sparked fears that England would become a puppet of Spain, and a massive rebellion exploded. Wyatt's rebellion in early 1554 was a protest against the Spanish marriage. Mary acted like a total boss, crushing the rebellion, and while most of the regular guys were pardoned, the leaders were executed. This uprising also sealed the fate of Lady Jane Grey. Even though she was innocent, she was now seen as too dangerous to keep alive, and she was beheaded. With the rebellion crushed, Mary's government started its dark work. In February 1555, the burnings began. The first to die was John Rogers, a Bible translator. Over the next 3.5 years, nearly 280 Protestants were burned at the stake. These weren't just powerful people. The victims were normal people, tradesmen, laborers, and at least 56 women. They were killed in huge public events designed to terrify everyone else into submission. The most famous victim was Thomas Cranmer, the man who divorced her mother. Under pressure, Cranmer gave up his Protestant faith. But on the day of his execution, in an insane plot twist, he publicly took back his confession. As the fire grew, he shoved the hand that signed the confession into the flames first, so it would burn before the rest of him. His death became a powerful symbol of defiance. In her mind, Mary was a surgeon, cutting out a cancer to save the nation. She thought the burnings were a horrible but necessary tool to save her people's souls. But to her subjects, these fires were a horror movie. The smoke choked all the love they once had for her, and the name her people gave her wouldn't be Mary the Restorer, but one that would stain her name forever. Mary's personal tragedies were as bad as her political failures. The one thing she needed for her plan to succeed, a Catholic heir, never happened. In late 1554, the palace announced the Queen was pregnant. England went crazy, getting ready for a prince who would keep the country Catholic. Mary had all the signs. Her stomach was swelling. She felt sick. In April 1555, she went into lockdown to wait for the birth. But the due date came and went. Weeks turned into months. By the summer, the horrifying truth came out. There was no baby. It was a phantom pregnancy, probably caused by how badly she wanted a child. The public humiliation was unreal. Her husband, Philip, disappointed, just left her and went back to Europe. Then, in an almost unbelievably cruel twist, history repeated itself in 1557. Mary, now super sick, again thought she was pregnant. This was another phantom pregnancy, likely hiding the ovarian cancer that was actually killing her. Her hopes were completely gone. There would be no heir. Her Catholic mission would die with her. The final blow came in January 1558. Because of her unpopular alliance with Spain in a war against France, England lost Calais, its last piece of land on the continent, which it had held for over 200 years. The loss was a huge blow to national pride. Mary herself was devastated, famously saying that when she was dead, they would find Philip and Calais carved on her heart. Broken by sickness, sadness, and failure, Queen Mary died on November 17, 1558, at only 42 years old. She died thinking that God was punishing her, leaving her crown to the one person she had spent her whole life trying to stop, her Protestant half-sister, Elizabeth. Mary's reign was short, just 5 years, but its impact was massive. Her brutal mission to get rid of Protestants completely backfired. It created an epic story of heroes and martyrs that was immortalized in books that cemented her bloody reputation for centuries. While other countries were doing this stuff too, the massive scale of the burnings in England left a deep scar. Yet her story is more than just a simple villain. She was England's first queen to rule with total authority, proving a woman could run the show. She was a person of incredible courage, forged by years of suffering. The absolute tragedy is that her unstoppable faith, the very thing that got her through her darkest times, became the weapon of her cruelty as queen. She tried to save her people's souls, but in the end, she became the queen who burned them. If you thought this insane story of Mary was compelling, make sure to subscribe and like this video. Let us know in the comments, who do you think is the most tragic figure of the Tudor era? Thanks for watching.